Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DM Shower Thoughts, the show where we talk about our shower thoughts in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop scenarios in general, and how to become your best self through gaming. My name is Adamus.
I'm John.
And I'm Ian.
Woo!
Hi! All right, so we're in this cool new format to try this out as a video feed, as well as we'll still release this in podcast form on Podbean, but this video also opens the doors. Instead of an audio visualizer, we can do this on YouTube, which is pretty cool. So, I have a quick random question though, because I've seen this on a number of people just kind of asking about us, and as a quick icebreaker in this new format, how are each of you doing with your quarantine? Like, are there certain things you're noticing about yourself and how you operate throughout the day that have changed? And how are you adapting to that kind of format?
I'm going to have Ian go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I was going to have you go first.
Oh.
But it's no matter. I'll go first. I find, just in general, I find that there's a level of frustration that kind of hangs over me a little bit, because not only that our school classes in person have been canceled in a sense, but now we have switched to an online format, and that online format has actually made a really big increase in my workload as a student. And it means that I have to actively not only just attend the lectures or whatever whenever they're online, but also proactively do my homework and make sure that everything's on time. And I'm spending it feels like I'm spending a lot more time at school, quote unquote, than I was before. And that's why it's also troublesome, because, of course, I can't work right now because my job was no, safety and all that.
Yeah.
But even if I could work, I don't know if I have the time. And as a student who's commuting traditionally, I do have to pay rent. So it's tricky. And so I have enough money saved up for now, but Mary Kate and I are trying to find ways to get more money. I'm applying to unemployment, and so there's that hanging over me, waiting to see if I get accepted and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, just in general, the whole quarantine thing is rather frustrating for me. But at the same time, I mean, it's kind of nice to be proactive. It's kind of nice to get my things done and be able to say, okay, I've done a lot of that today. I don't need to do any more. I can just do something else because I have the rest of the week to do it too. And all 5 days of my normal schedule are longer, but still getting it done, and I still get to play D&D, which is helping a lot.
Yeah.
All right, I can go next off of that. So I feel like I'm in a similar-ish boat with you, in that I found that this quarantine has actually tripled my workload more so than it usually does. Because I teach martial arts, and as a small business, we've felt the economic recession that we've gone into. So not only do I have my finances to worry about, I am constantly trying to keep the small business afloat too. So there's that extra pressure. I've been sending the reason I was late was I was trying to at the same time upload 2 different YouTube videos to 2 different channels, because that's what we do. We stream our classes online, but we also upload them to an unlisted YouTube channel so that our students have access to it. Things like setting up, scheduling all of the Zoom stuff, trying to be proactive, but almost feeling like you're drowning in all of it. And it's hard because you want to keep people informed without hitting them with too much information that they get overwhelmed and shut down. Because that happens sometimes. Imagine if you received 10 emails within an hour of each other. Yeah, there might be great content, but you may not have the patience to actually sift through it. So there's kind of managing that aspect. And it's funny because I agree with you, Ian. If it wasn't for D&D, I would probably go bonkers. One of the lights out of this was kind of like Adam mentioned it. I actually bought a video game for the first time in a while. I bought Resident Evil 2, the remake, and it was like on sale for like $20 online for a straight download.
Oh, jeez.
That is if you've ever played Resident Evil, I highly recommend the RE2 remake. And it's funny. It's almost like because we have this pattern interrupt where everyone stops, we have all this time to play D&D. But yesterday, I did something I never thought I'd do, which someone texted me like, hey, do you want to do a pickup game of D&D tonight? And I was like, no, immediately, because there's so much more that, and this will tie into my shower thought later, but there's so much more that goes into the online gaming in terms of your prep to make it run smoothly that in other times where I might be able to just like pick up some dice and be like, all right, everyone make a 5th level character in the next hour and we'll go. Like, I had to be like, no, it's going to stress me out so much more, and I won't get this business stuff done if I play this pickup game. And also, we're about to play like 3 games in a row, including tonight. Like, it's not like there's not ample opportunity to play. But one last thing before I kind of pass it back off to you, Adam, is Ken, who is an individual that all 3 of us know. He's been my mentor in both business and martial arts for 20 years. He shared this awesome graphic about the quarantine. It's like directly related. It's almost spooky because he sent this to me an hour ago, and you asked that question just now. It was something shared by Tim Ferriss, which is, who do you want to be during the quarantine? So it's asking an identity-based question. Who do you want to try to be? Which I think is great because this is the perfect platform for it, because this is where we find our best selves. So the first zone is the fear zone. So do you want to have somebody that hoards food, toilet paper, medication that you don't need? Do you want to be someone that spreads emotions related to fear and anger? So when you post on Facebook, where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of fear or anger? Or we'll get to the next one. And then it's, do you complain frequently? You know, do you forward messages that or it says I forward all messages I receive. It depends on the message, I guess, for that one. Or I get mad easily, you know? And like, I just went through 2 days and I apologize for the people that had to deal with me because I was a Grumps McGee. And I'm finally coming off on the other end of it. But the second one is the learning zone, which is I start to give up what I can't control, which is an interesting one. It's recognizing what's in the realm of my control, what's not, what am I willing to let go, what am I holding on to, and is it worth it to hold on to, you know? I stop compulsively consuming what hurts me from food to news. And that's been something I've tried to do since 6th grade, which is we always had to do current events projects in social studies. And one thing I learned was if I try to keep up with all current events, especially at the rate of information these days, because remember, the teachers that were teaching me in 6th grade were used to, you have the newspaper, not I have the breadth of the internet to try to absorb and sift through, you know? So I recognize as an 11-year-old, if I try to keep up with everything, this is going to be toxic to my happiness. And it's going to defeat the purpose of staying informed. Not that you shouldn't stay informed, but just there's a balance to it. You shouldn't try to compulsively absorb media. You know, you should be the gateway to your own heart and mind. And you know, sometimes there might be some stuff where it's like, yeah, that's tragic. So that just means I have to work extra hard at finding the things that are going to keep me happy, you know? Another one is I can identify my emotions, you know, having that metacognition, like recognizing I'm being a jerk right now, you know, becoming aware of the situation and thinking through how you want to act. You know, is it worth it to post this angry thing? Is it actually going to evoke any change? Or do I just feel like I need an outlet, and is this the most appropriate way to do that? Evaluating information before spreading something false, recognizing we're all trying our best. And the last zone is the growth zone, which is I think of the others and see how to help them. I make my talents available to those that need them. So that's like, you know, all 3 of us have been taking on a lot more workload in terms of D&D, just to make sure that we can spread that satisfying experience to as many people as we can. And that's really cool. I live in the present and focus on the future, which is interesting. So you're not letting the fear of the future drag you down, but you're not losing sight of it. I'm empathetic with myself and with others. And I think it's interesting he identifies both. Empathize with yourself and your own situation and be forgiving if you get mad, but don't let it be a habit and don't let it be a justification, because that happens a lot too, where you're like, oh, I forgive myself. And then you create a consistent pattern of the same behaviors. And really, it's like, how many times do you get to say sorry to yourself before you do something about it, you know? I think and appreciate others. This was an interesting one because one of our adult students recently was in a grocery store and there was a woman behind him acting rude, basically being like, hey, like, the person in front of me is wearing a mask. I don't need to do my 6 foot distance. And he took it really personally where he's like, you know, as a black belt, I should have stepped up. I should have said something. And he felt really bad about it. And I said, first of all, you identified the fact that you were frustrated. Also, that might not have been appropriate. That might have actually started something worse. And you don't know how people are going to react, especially if you come at it with what we call a tiger approach. So I said, it's probably not the right answer. But what I would have done is I would have just thanked the staff for doing an awesome job and, you know, making sure that society can function. That's what I would have first gone to. Instead of telling the woman, like, you don't know your science and you should back up and, like, accuse her of something, I would have just, the staff is going to react the way the staff reacts. And I would have just been like, thank you so much for contributing value to our society, you know? And then I keep a happy emotional state and spread hope. I look for a way to adapt to new changes. I practice quietude, which I think is funny. When do you talk, or when do you stay a little quiet, which apparently I'm having trouble doing right now. And patience, relationships, and creativity. So I just thought that was a cool kind of progression to share. And just because you find yourself in one, you're not tenured to that. So there might be times where you feel that you're in the growth zone and other times that you're in the fear zone. But the learning zone is the one where it's like you're at least able to identify it, you know? And if you can identify it in the moment, now you have the ability to make a choice that's impactful to both and provides value to both you and others, you know? Yeah. So yeah. I stopped talking now.
No, I thought I was getting the sense that by asking this question, we could get a nice flow going. That actually is, I think, is going to tie in directly into all of our shower thoughts. There's sort of a theming to those shower thoughts. A couple observations from my end. I have made myself a very strict schedule, and then I executed that schedule midway through last week, and then, oh my gosh, we had vacation. And vacation, even though vacation has a travel ban and all that jazz, in school we maintained our April vacation. So all the kids got sort of used to this, 2 weeks of online learning. We have some observations about that. And then their routines went, okay, no school to worry about, yay. But in a lot of ways, they needed that. They absolutely needed that, because I have exponentially more to do than being full-time and a half teacher across 2 schools. I have exponentially more to do, but the time frame is all different now. I could theoretically, if this was a school day, I would have already had my open office hours for my 5th and 6th graders. I'll have another one. I don't have another one in the afternoon anymore. The afternoon, I would videotape lessons for band, and then I'd edit those down and I'd put graphics into them, and then I'd post them for the kids. And it's a lot more production. Now, I'm used to that form, though. I've lived that life before, but my fellow teachers haven't. So this is very, very, very different for them. And what we're discovering is online school, having your stuff online and having the agency and the self-discipline to schedule yourself and put yourself into a framework of schoolwork, of knowing, oh, these are all of my assignments on Monday, and now I have until Sunday to get them done. Okay, how in the world do I structure that? And also, you don't have the direct feedback of in the classroom, here's your assignment, Mr. Summer, how do I do this again? And getting that direct feedback, you have to type out your question and then wait for an answer. Or you have to use the online resources, the videos, the walkthroughs of the assignments that I make. I post an assignment and then I post a video of me going through it. And the students have to then watch that and react to it. And it's very, very different. It's more different than we thought it would be. We thought, oh, this generation is very good with YouTube. They'll absorb this just fine. Nope.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
It's extremely different. It's extremely different. And it adds so much workload to them. And they're already overwhelmed with all of the different paradigm changes that have happened. And so what we're seeing is I assign maybe a quarter of the work I would normally do because they don't have my direct help. And it also means I'm making materials I can work very efficiently with a video format and with scripting and with making and producing things. So I've set my assignments, scheduled them already for the majority of the year now. And now I can just focus on engaging with the kids and making sure they're okay. But my workflow has adjusted completely. I feel like I'm back on YouTube regularly making videos because I'm just focusing on producing so that I can provide the best experience for the kiddos as much as possible. But we have this thing of creating space for ourselves and creating space for them. And I have to realize the little things that I do to make myself feel better and to make myself feel happy, I need them tenfold now. Like my times of rest are really important. And the online stuff, I'm running games a lot more frequently than I was before. And it's to offer that form of escapism for my players and to give them something to do and to have us, create fun stories together. So Ian, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've been doing so many more games lately, and because I've had to work with multiple groups lately, especially, I've been noticing as a new DM what it's like to have experience from multiple types of groups, generalizing them as proactive players and reactive players. And this isn't uncommon in D&D theory and stuff. It's like, what do I do when my players are only reactive? And like, it feels like there's so much more work on me. Or what do I do when they're proactive? Because now it feels like there's so much more work on me, but in a different way. It's interesting because I do think that an optimal group, I'll just preface it, an optimal group probably has a good few proactive players and some reactive players mixed in. Because if you only have proactive, then I've found that the DM is required to micromanage a lot of things and try to get the story going for each of those individual players. Whereas with a reactive group, you're still working really hard on the story, but it's more front loading of the story. You need to know where it's going to go because they're going to just be reactive and basically walk through the story with you but less than operatively create this story with you. Because sometimes that happens is like, at least for me anyway, that when I have brought my group into a new room or something, I describe the room. I say there's this stuff and there's like 3 ways out of the room or something like that. And of course, they're going to be met with an option. But if I only have reactive players, like if nothing's going on, then I only have reactive players, I find that there's this like silence that's permeating sometimes if there's no like action, nothing to trigger them to like, oh, I definitely go down that way because obviously that's where all the kobolds are because I can hear them or something like that, instead of exploring. And this is just, this is mostly due to like dungeon crawling, which is like the very traditional D&D. And you have to be aware of your surroundings and stuff, and you don't want to make any missteps because you don't want to die to like a pitfall trap or something. But I just, I find that there's a strange difference in pressure on the DM's part when you have reactive players or proactive players and figuring out how to handle those situations best. But yeah, like I said, I think the best is just a mix of proactive and reactive players, and that'll help things go smoothly. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I'm discovering there's an evolution that can come into play when you have reactive and proactive, that there can be a change over time, that sometimes players are reactive because that's sort of in their nature. They're might be very patient. They want to see how the story is going to play out, and they don't want to interrupt whatever this flow is supposed to be. Or sometimes they get in their head of, are we doing it the right way? Are we playing the right way? Were we supposed to go down that door? And it's not even that there's no right or wrong way, guys. You're going to do what you're going to do, and that's okay. I know I see John's face now. But things that I'm discovering with that is that you might have really young players that don't know how to play yet, and then they are only reactive because they don't know what their rules are yet. They don't understand yet even if you presented it to them, they themselves don't have the efficacy yet of being able to be proactive.
Yeah.
But then the flip side can also be true, that you can have players, even young players, that are so proactive but are so far outside of what they understand about the game that in a way they're planning too much and they're asking too much up front. So it compounds the story and compounds the dynamic. So it makes it difficult for everybody to go together.
So 2 things on what you just said, because there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing is there is a right and a wrong path depending on what the party has established that it wants.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, I think back to our Dragon Heist game, where as part of the story, there was a priestess of Arathis who was the invention goddess, and that one of their constructs basically had a Frankenstein-like story where it built its own mate that then ran away. And so the priestess, by the laws of Arathis, had to destroy the construct. And then the party hesitated too much. And I gave ample time to be like, do you want to interfere? And the party kind of froze. And so the construct was killed. And then everyone was like, well, why'd she do that? And it's like, she told you like a few times she was going to do that. And for that party, they did the wrong choice because they wanted the construct to live and they chose not to save it. So the whole right-wrong thing, a lot of times really what a reactive player is asking is, based on our objective, based on what our established goal is this something that's going to aid our goal, or is it something that's going to hinder it? So if we went in the wrong door, it means that we did an encounter that's not going to help us. It's going to burn resources so that we aren't as prepared for the big boss encounter, Yeah. So that's what they mean by right or wrong. The other thing is, when it comes to proactive and reactive players, it's funny because we just did the YouTube channel or the YouTube video on this. Those are behavioral patterns, not who those players are. Just like the identity thing with the zones, right? So like if you have someone who tends to be reactive, it may be the group. I've seen players be more proactive because they're more comfortable with one DM than another. Their tendencies can change over time. And I find that this is an excellent conversation for how skilled a player is. Because one of the things I try to do in my personal development is recognize when it's time to be proactive and when it's time to shut up. So like there's times where the DM's trying to describe something. This isn't the time to interrupt them in their long monologue. Unless there's something that literally could be like life or death for the party, or if it's something where it's like, oh, we'll just sit around and let the bad guy ritual cast his death spell. We'll let him throw the meteor into Earth. That's probably, a time where I could like interrupt. But there's a timing to it where it's like, we're in a blank room, time to explore. And when you have players that inappropriately react, that's where you get the thing Ian was talking about, which we've all been through, which is, everyone's silent and the DM asks, what do you want to do? And nobody knows what to do because they feel they don't have enough information to work on, and they don't even know how to begin to ask the questions that'll get them where they want to go, So So yeah, I think that the first thing is to identify it as a tendency of behaviors, and then play with different encounters and see how the party reacts. See what they tend to want to be proactive at. See where they're kind of holding back, and that'll help you adjust to the style of that particular table.
Yeah.
When I have new players and younger players, when I get those motes of silence, I will give them a few seconds and then interject with, the room is yours to explore. You could investigate. You could take a look around. You could wait and watch your fellow party members, and you can wait and see. These are your options, and try to give them a list of things they can do. Because a lot of the time they're like, it's like the blank slate thing, or the blank page thing. They're just, I don't even know what to do, and what are even my choices here. But that's also young players, and you see that spectrum and evolution in older players too. There's sometimes that sort of freeze up of, what can we do? What are our options? But even that, they're not even asking, what can we do? They're just...
Yeah, I would say it's not even anything. It's not a younger, older player, because you can be a person that's an older age but still be a younger player.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, I can agree. And this is based on, like, this whole shower thought is really based on the game that I had yesterday afternoon. And we're doing Tyranny of Dragons. And I'm on the first half of it, so it's Horde of the Dragon Queen. And we're at this point where it's a bit of a dungeon crawl through the Dragon Hatchery. And the Dragon Hatchery basically has two ways you can go right off the bat. You either go forward through like this mushroomy forest thing, and you have to like take this really roundabout way to get to the end of the place, or you can just take the shortcut and go through like the raider captain's quarters and get to like this ending part. And they opted for the latter. Not that they knew which one was better. It's just they happened to do that. And I brought them basically to the final fight immediately because I was forced to. That's where they were. And so we had like 3-hour combat session basically, which wasn't awful. It was pretty cinematic, but it's just like I was kind of expecting a lot more dungeon crawling in this dungeon crawl than just, oh hey, here's the final guy, remember him, he tried to kill you, and that kind of thing. And now now that the final boss fight is over, they're stuck with the option of basically leaving the cave and all that stuff and getting out of there like their goal is, or going and exploring the rest of the cave. And so I don't know if I don't really know what they're going to be doing, but there were these just awkward moments where it's like, I don't know, what do you want to do today? I don't know, what do you want to do today? You know?
What do you want to do tonight? I don't know, what do you want to do tonight?
Yeah. And then another voice not in the party, I don't know, what do you want to do today? Like, no, that would be scary.
Random encounter, hello.
Yeah, another encounter after 3 hours of combat. No, but there's a lot of encounters in this place, and so I'm just not sure what would be best for creating an engaging story, going back into this cave or exiting the cave after maybe killing all the dragon eggs that were there. So it's going to be interesting to find out, but I just felt like I wasn't sure if I was doing it right as a DM, so to speak.
Yeah, no, sometimes it's just it's you as the DM have a lot of responsibility and a lot of play in how the session runs, but ultimately it is also part of the accountability as your players, because like and it can just be the scenario. So campaign 1 I ran when I was doing Monday D&D with Dragon Heist, that was like, to me, one of the best campaigns to be a part of story-wise. I tried campaign 2 and the players just changed. They weren't I don't know where it was coming from, but like the players themselves, like they changed personalities, they weren't cooperating with each other. I don't know and again, it's still something I kind of mull over every now and again. Was there something structurally I did as the DM to encourage this drastic change in play style? Were the players just trying a new way of playing and behaving to see what would work? Was it just the scenario, you know, like, was it both? And like, it's something that there's not one factor I can point to where it was like, you know, that play wasn't as satisfying as the play I was doing before. And at the same time, I don't, it's just something that bothers me too. And it's good because, again, it's being able to identify that stuff and learn and grow from it. I will say that in my experience, what you had with reactive players, which is basically choice paralysis, there's so much choice, they're overwhelmed, like the blank canvas. Proactive players can loop to the other side where there's over choice paralysis. So, and that kind of happened in our Grey Owls game, where it took us an hour to open a door because we had to ask every mechanic on every spell everyone had what the best solution would be instead of just open the door, you know? And I think, and it took another hour to open the second door behind it because of the same thing. And it becomes one of those things, when do you give players choice? When do you take choice away? So, for example, if like I say I ritual cast detect magic, I don't ask the other players, what do you want to do? Because it's going to take so long to try to juggle all of the different things that they're trying to do at the same time that it's just like, all right, 10 minutes passes, boom. Unless a player interjects, while he's doing that, I would like to do that. But you don't invite them to do it because then it's one more thing to resolve. It's, I ritual cast it. Okay, 10 minutes passes. This is the information you have. Because then sometimes what a player wants to do during that ritual casting will actually be aided if you just let the ritual cast go off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's always my frustration as a player. It's like, just wait for the ritual to end. Just have the DM say 10 minutes passes, on to the next thing. And then how much could get resolved that way, you know?
Yeah, and it's a lot of those things, a lot of those ritual casts are like detection magic and, you know, things that are meant to help you understand your surroundings. And while I'll have characters go, well, while he's doing that, I go check that house out. And it's like,
yeah,
that house is magically trapped, maybe wait, you know? And you would have known that if you would have allowed the detect magic to go off. It's an interesting thing. And having players perceive game time, like we know that game time is a structural weird construct that can ebb and flow. That's why combat can take a long time and conversations can be like that, and travel can take no time at all. We know this, but in the perception of players playing, sometimes if we're not careful, we might be so busy resolving certain things, which have value in their own right, but a player could perceive, oh, a lot of time has passed. I should do something. And now they're doing something when really in game time and actual the flow of time, maybe that wouldn't have been appropriate, but now we're trying to resolve something else. And that's a difficulty also from the players. The players have to be able to gauge when it's appropriate for them to react or when it's appropriate for them to be proactive. Is this an appropriate time for me to jump in? And because that has an ebb and flow and it changes table to table, there's no blanket answer. It's trying to read the room a little bit better, and it's trying to read the group better. John, that second campaign on Monday, I tried. I don't know what happened. I think it was also, so many of us were probably feeling very confident in trying new things that we completely went 180. Like we changed everything and it crashed. It crashed and it burned a while.
Well, and there was an impatience too, I think, out of it. Like normally in campaign, like campaign 1 felt like it mattered. Campaign 2 felt like it didn't. So like campaign 1, it was like, we need to stop Tiamat, you know? And I think it started when I had Brandish's mom die and there was that emotional connection. Campaign 2, there was no hook. Nobody gave me like something that they could actively go search for, except for Enna, but whose personality also didn't really, like, she was just angry, you know what I mean? So so I tried to give something that would have a hook. So it's this is why you want to do this, but nobody seemed to care. So I had no, and I thought I tried to have conversations, which is like, what do your characters want? and nobody really seemed to give me anything that I could really leverage off of, you know?
And as a player, I felt rushed. And whether that was a product of the whole system or the other players at the table or just the dynamic as a whole, there was a point where I think in the middle of stuff, we were getting ready for the campaign to start one night. And I was like, John, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
What are we even doing? And that was hard. I had no clue. Like, I had a hard time holding on to the story. I had a hard time going, why are we doing that again? What was it? And you had presented it clearly, but as the party, I just felt like I was just being pulled in a direction, and I didn't have the space to create value for it. So it's not just the DM, Ian, in us trying to figure out what this the two camps of proactive and reactive players. I think it changes, it changes group to group and game to game. I'll have games where people suddenly are very forward thinking and proactive and looking for those options, and then other games where they're just, no, I'm just watching. And it's very different, and it's just trying to gauge the ebb and flow. And it is, I think, okay to pause the game and be like, so what's going on here? And be able to level with the group. It's like, this is what I'm seeing, and I'd like to support you in how we're playing here. Is something going on? Is there something you're not getting? Or is there something you're getting a lot of and you'd like less? And it's okay to have like that session 5.5 where you get to stop and just, hey, what's going on? And it's also, I mean, I did that with Pirates often. We would pause and be like, I'm feeling a weird pushback right now in terms of how the rules are being interpreted, and this is where my perspective is, and what's going on, and how can I help? And that's okay to do, because you don't want to do that all the time, but also if it's happening a lot and you have to feel like you have to pause a lot, there might be a dynamic shift that needs to happen. That's a whole other can of worms later.
Oh yeah.
Actually, that leads right into the notes I had for what we're going to talk. So I have notes. So if you see me looking down, I'm reading my notes. So really, and this was sparked because WebDM yesterday released a video on online gaming, which is something that like everyone's doing right now. It's like tutorials on how to use Roll20. And what I thought was really fascinating is the value they added to the conversation was the pros and cons of online gaming. Like, what do you get by doing it, and what do you lose by sitting at the table? And obviously, some people prefer one over the other. So really, the like the learning zone thing, which I think I'm just gonna keep coming back to. It's being able to recognize what's actually good about this. Like Matthew and I were talking about, we're going to miss the fact that we have a chat open, which is why I had suggested, like, hey, I wonder if there would be a group where you combine the best of both worlds. You have everyone at a table, but everyone has the laptop open with Roll20, so that if they want to whisper to each other, you can do it without being obvious, So, and that way everyone has the same view of the map. There's a lot less confusion. There's an ongoing record, I'm going to miss all that. And I think it's something that definitely added value to our games. So, to get into it, there's some stuff that this is mostly from our experience. If you want to go watch that video, I highly recommend it. It'll probably change your perspective on it. But to start with, I find that the pros of online gaming include, and I'm not even going to talk about matchmaking, like finding people that when normally you wouldn't have other people to game with. That's like, in a nutshell, one of the biggest strength probably for a lot of people. But some of the strengths include the fact that the rules are available just through a Google search. So like you can just open a new tab. You have Roll20 has a compendium. So if it's like how do grapples work, look it up. Like I said, there's a record of events. We have like you said, Adam, for campaign 2, how helpful would it have been to just be able to on your own go back through the chat to be able to be like, this is what's happened, And that way, if you have a player that's like, oh, I didn't catch that, you can just be like, scroll up. And then they have it for them. It's not an argument of, well, he said, she said, but I said, and it's like, no, this is what happened, you know? If there is an interpretation that was miscommunicated, that's different, but there's an objective record of what was said to who when. The whisper function I really like. I think that it adds a lot to have.
I'm going to keep using that.
Well, and
in some way, yeah.
Because the idea is when we try to have secrets at the table, it's so obvious that there's a secret that the intention of having some kind of game element like that is disrupted by the fact that it's hard to do. And I think the only way we could do it is through text messages. If we're at the table, if we don't have our laptops with Roll20 open. And I think that that's a really valuable kind of tool with it. I actually find my role playing's been a lot deeper because I'm typing it out instead of saying it. I don't know if there's an embarrassment thing or if there's a speed thing that, you know, everybody I don't know if it's the record thing, but we've been finding in a lot of our games that incorporate the chat for this purpose, like the stuff that we've been getting from our players is a lot deeper, a lot more satisfying, makes much more story sense, that it really gives the space for deeper role play. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. This is just something I've noticed from the games I've played in. And the last thing is you get to play with multimedia. So you get to really easily display a character portrait, a map, music. You get to you have control over the mood that you're setting. And the response is a lot faster than digging through your folder to pull out a portrait that you wasted a lot of money printing with all the ink, you know. It's just immediate and it's there. Now, some of the cons to it, right, some of the weaknesses, the technical setup is a pain in the butt. Everybody at some point has had trouble with either the server not timing or the server timing out, or getting Discord or Roll20 to work, making sure you got the right things muted so that you're not echoing. Some people are more patient with it than others, but it is a weakness. You have to have that. And because of that, you can immersion just as easily as you can get into deep immersion. You can have it disrupted by losing chat or by losing voice, you know, or video. You need a rules of conduct. To me, this is a weakness because you need everyone to play by the rules. So what I mean by that is we're agreeing. For us, if it's game related, it goes in the Roll20 chat. If it's not game related, it goes in Discord's chat, you know? So, and, you know, push to talk. As a player, I find push to talk like necessary to keep the social boundaries at the table. And we've had a few players be like, I just don't like push to talk. And I have found those to be the disruptive players when we're at the table, even if they don't mean to be, even if they're quiet, they have background noise going on that constantly disrupts the flow of the table. So having to be like, you need push to talk. Now, that being said, the DM gets to play by other rules because they're the DM. So I find when I'm DMing like Mad Mage, I can't have push to talk on so that way I can immediately respond while I'm typing something else out, you know? Otherwise, I can't be typing with one hand and have another hand on a button. You know what I mean? As the DM, as the adjudicator and the judge of the table, you need that freedom to be able to have a really strong flow, satisfying game. You know, as a player, I've been trying to think of a better word. Trigger discipline is the only one that comes up, which is basically if it's worth talking about, you have that extra second to consider when you go to press that freaking little button to decide, is it worth sharing right now, or is it going to be more disruptive? And it also reminds you about chat, that you can't just shout out your thought on impulse, that you have to enter it into the official record. And then it also just highlights that this game is best played with 4 people. I have yet to play in a game with more than 4 players and 1 DM that has reached the same level of satisfaction as the games that have 4 people. At the table, that's different. I've played in games of 4 that are less satisfying than games of 6. I've played in really satisfying games, as many as 10. In an online format, I haven't played in a game with, and this is just me, but I haven't played in a game where there's more than 4 players and it has the same flow and the same level of respect.
there's an exponential. We had this the thought of exponentiality, that there's just something that compounds and adds. It adds energy to the system, but in ways that we may not like. When you have this game in an online format, is really built for 4 people. I've been able to run games with 6, but after that, I don't go any higher. I think even Night Owls, I've got a party of 5 and a party of 4 now that we split up options, and those have been very satisfying. And I agree that there's a higher depth of role playing, and I think that actually ties directly back into what my the icebreaker was, because when I have players that are a little bit more skilled, they're more willing to take the time to write out what they're doing. And that practice, it's like they're okay with it. It might even be uncomfortable at first, but they'll take the time to think about what they're going to say and how they're going to say it and how they're going to ask their questions. And that's perfect. But then the students that I struggle with in my school, and then the players that seem to have problems, are ones that need to tell you right now, and they need to say it, and we need a response right now. And when you're crafting your response so that it's the right response and it's the right thing, so that people don't get confused and it's not just reactive, that can be very difficult for people because they'll get impatient, whether they're aware of that or not. So I really appreciate the amount of the life lesson of having to type in my things. I was a little worried about it at first, like, oh, people are going to get bored. I have so much to react to. I have so much to do when we're doing it like a text, but I've got plenty to do. I'm not bored, and no one else is either, because I can trust, because of the rules of conduct, people will read chat. They have to. And that means they're also, if everyone's using the chat, that opens the door for everyone to be able to use the chat. When it gets wonky is when you can have 3 players that are using the chat, but then one that refuses to. And now it's like it almost invalidates that person may not be looking at all the cool descriptions and character interactions that are happening in the chat. They're just waiting to talk. Or they've missed details, or they'll sometimes look at the chat, but not all the time. So they're missing certain key points. There's a lot of how strange it is when one point in the machine is different, and one point in the machine goes, I just don't want to do that. And it makes the whole thing go from this wonderful, well-oiled flow to really rocky and can be really difficult. So it's delicate. And that's a con of this whole setup. You need your rules of conduct, because the moment you break those rules of conduct, I think the machine can break, and it can get really hard. And you can see it, you can feel it as we're running our games. We get a nice flow going, and the moment we get a little bit lax on that flow, things get really rough really quickly. And that's definitely a con. And the setup of this thing can be a big pain, and it's very delicate. And maybe all that it takes is one person to lose their video feed. Oh, I can't see the map anymore. And everything grinds to a halt.
Yeah. And
now you have to fix that technical. And then maybe you'll get your flow back. Maybe not. It might have just killed it. And that's not our fault. That's not the player's fault. It's the system that the format that we're playing in is not dependable for achieving that flow. Whereas on a table, I think we're able to kind of pick back up a lot easier.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me of something, Adam, which is when people try to share or shout out, what happens is sometimes their audio will cut out. So you actually can't hear, even though they want an immediate response. And that's when everything grinds to a halt, right? It's exactly what you said. When one person doesn't agree to I know, and it's ironic because I just did that to Ian, but it's when one person chooses not to go by that everything kind of gets disrupted, right? My last thought with it, which I meant to say as part of the strengths, is that I have found that as long as we are in character development mode, I am allowed to participate all of the time, whereas if we're together in tabletop, I'm not. So, and what I mean by that is, say the DM has a one-on-one conversation, like NPC to one player on an aside. As a player at the table, I am now not included. I get to listen, I get to immerse myself or whatever, but as a player, I am not included, right? As a person, even if I'm invested in the story. Whereas if, say, you're having a one-on-one conversation with Ian in this format, right? And, you know, you're having like an in-depth thing, I can react as a player in chat and be like, whoa, that's cool. If it's something where it's like an actual conversation, I can add details that would be disruptive at the table. So like I could be like, you know, Solomon crosses his arms and leans his back against a wall. It's a really cool immersive thing that allows me to participate. But if I'm like, if you guys are having an awesome dialogue and I'm like, wait, DM, I cross my arms and lean my back, you know, that's like a cool character detail, not something, it's also something that's disruptive and keeps happening even though we're in this format. It's like, don't shout it out, you know, there's got to be, it gives the space for those little character moments. That's what's been making the Friday night games, Ian, so awesome, is there's space for everybody to put in those little character moments that really let you know everything you need to know without any line of dialogue, you know?
Yeah, so. No, absolutely. Yeah, now that you mention it, with the Friday night games, it's been also an interesting experience because as a new DM, I do want to make sure that I'm engaging all my players. So when they have this media outlet to add these kinds of things, it really makes things easier on my part to make sure that everyone feels like they're, you know, part of the story, or at least there, you know, somehow. And it's just making me realize that, you know, if a player character is not necessarily like interacting in that scene, that doesn't mean they're having a bad time. And it doesn't mean that they're not engaged in the story or whatever. If they haven't spoken for like 20 lines of whatever's going on, then it's not necessarily like that they're not interested. It's just they're being quiet and they're doing whatever they need to do to enjoy the game. So, and that's just interesting for me when it comes to like combat heavy characters who are like, it's like, yes, I'm a barbarian and barbarians like to smash things. Like if it's that kind of character, then it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a whole lot of social stuff, at least in comparison to the other characters who might have some interesting outside goals and things like that. So that's pretty cool. The thing that I was going to say with the pros of deepened roleplay was that you mentioned you feel that your text-based roleplay is much more in-depth and expressive than the vocal roleplay. And I was just going to say that that's kind of how I felt all my life, because when I started picking up RPGs online and MMOs and things like that, it is text-based, unless you have like voice chat or whatever. But like that's not as fun. You don't roleplay as well because you are yourself when you're speaking. So you're just trying to put yourself in an actor's position and try to become that character. Whereas when you just type it out, you're like, oh, this is obviously what my character would say. And you type it exactly how you want, and you don't have to worry about translating your words in your head to the words out of your mouth. You just type it, and you have as much time as you need. So it's nice in that way, especially for me, coming from a creative storytelling background, creative writing background, I was going to say. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Well, everyone, now has come time for us to explore our I guess, a fundamental, what we had deemed our fundamental category, but it's subclasses part 3 for Unearthed Arcana. We're catching up. So we're going to go over some things and then talk about what we think about them. So the subclasses part 3 for Unearthed Arcana 2020 offers new playtest options for Artificer, Druid, and Ranger. The Artificer gets an Armorer option, and I think the Druid is Circle of the Stars. That's right. Okay, which was very interesting to me. And then the Fey Wanderer Ranger. So this is going to be an interesting time. Does anybody have initial thoughts about this document before we get into the nitty-gritty?
I love all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised that they released an Artificer UA so close to releasing the official class that I really like the fact that it's not that, we released Artificer, let's give it a year. They're all systems go, I think that the Druid Circle of the Stars is both an interesting flavor, and the mechanics are interesting enough that I would actually want to play one. And then the Ranger has a function that not only has really, powerful mechanics for a Ranger, gotta preface it, but I would play that character strictly for the role-playing opportunities.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really hyped for the Ranger because I love all things Fae. So, and I think it's going to be cool. Because you didn't do an armor for Mizzix, right?
No, Mizzix was an artillery, or no, an alchemist. So Mizzix, yeah, my Goblin Artificer is an alchemist, but his magic item is a Staff of Power, which I think I actually upgraded to something else recently. But with the way I flavored the Staff of Power was I took away all of its staff things and I flavored it like Iron Man armor that spells out of. So it did nothing armor class or like systems wise, but for the flavor, he was kind of like Mega Man, and he had like all these different his spells were abilities that his armor could do.
Yeah, no, it's just because I saw this and I was like, that sounds really familiar. But
yeah,
we'll get
in terms of flavor, I got right into it and saw, oh yeah, well, what if Mizzix could adjust to this? And I don't know if it's appropriate to pivot for the flavor of it all.
I think mechanics wise, if I wanted the mechanics to match the flavor, it would be. The reason Mizzix is an alchemist is because he is a hard support for that party composition. There aren't a lot of support characters there, and he needs to be able to support everybody. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So looking into these things, we're going to start off with the Artificer. And the Artificer is the armorer option. An Artificer who specializes as an armorer modifies armor to function almost like a second skin. The armor is enhanced to hone the Artificer's magic, unleash potent attacks, and generate a formidable defense. You also bond with this armor, so that's nice. So you get a couple third level features that show up here. In fact, you get a whole bunch of them, but they might expand your options. So at third level, you gain Tools of the Trade. You gain proficiency with heavy armor. You also gain proficiency with smith's tools. If you already have this tool proficiency, you gain proficiency with one other type of artisan's tools of your choice. That's pretty standard. Then get armorer spells. You always have certain spells prepared after you reach particular levels in this class, of course. Now we get armorer spells in their table. We get Magic Missile, Shield, Mirror Image, Shatter, Hypnotic Pattern, Lightning Bolt, Fire Shield, Greater Invisibility, Pass Wall, and Wall of Force. And I like that they gave us a design note for the subclass spells. So that's nice. That's just making sure we're checking our rules. Then Power Armor. You get a third level feature. Your metallurgical, that's a good word, your metallurgical pursuits have led you making armor a conduit for your Artificer magic. As an action, you can turn a suit of heavy armor you are wearing into power armor, provided you have smith tools in hand. You gain the following benefits while wearing the power armor. If the armor normally has a strength requirement, the armor lacks this requirement for you. You can use the power armor as a spell casting focus for your Artificer spells. Now all I can think of is Iron Man. Just the power armor attaches to you and can't be removed against your will. It also expands to cover your entire body, and it replaces any missing limbs functioning identically to a body part it is replacing. The armor continues to be power armor until you doff it. you don another suit of armor, or you die. Oh boy.
So
Yeah,
can
go
we
ahead.
go back to the spell list for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's a freaking awesome spell list.
Yeah.
Like magic missile, shield. The only one that I'm having trouble seeing from a flavor perspective is hypnotic pattern. It's just I guess you could say like the armor has like kind of like a hypnotizing hologram or something that like messes with people.
Just that
But,
wheel, that hypnotic wheel. Like,
Right.
Yeah, like a loading screen. But yeah, no, I that spell list is it definitely positions the artificer with this subclass to be a lot more independent, and to basically function as a secondary tank, which I think is I don't think that 5th edition has enough of a spectrum of competitive tank characters right now. To me, the 2 tanks that you can basically choose to build to are Barbarian and Paladin.
Yeah.
Everything else can have a high armor class.
Not a fighter. Barbarian and Paladin.
No, I don't think fighter is a competitive tank. I think fighter, the more I'm seeing the materials getting released, I have a feeling the fighter is more of a control character in 5th edition. That if you position it as a controller, it can contribute a lot of value. But in terms of tanking or damage dealing, it gets outclassed by Paladin and Barbarian.
Yeah, I can see that. I really appreciate the this flavor of an armor set that just kind of covers your whole body. I also like the idea that like if you ever had a character that was like, I'm a one-armed creature, the armor now creates an arm for you so that you function like it, like you're a complete humanoid entity. I like that spell list quite a lot. I could also imagine the hypnotic pattern being like an explosion of like flares or whatnot that would then confuse, but then what they're actually seeing is the after image, the other pigments in your eyes when you get blinded by something, and that's just it's taking them a longer time to recover from that. If we really wanted to go that route.
I also like the idea of a Warforged that tinkers with themselves. So if you have a Warforged armorer, they can... Go ahead, Ian.
No, I was just agreeing with you there. That sounds actually pretty cool. I like the fact that the power armor is an action, and it doesn't take like an amount of time really, like outside combat, like 10 minutes or an hour or whatever, to actually make it. It says as an action, you turn the heavy armor you're wearing into power armor. So like you could do this. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't do it before combat, but technically you could do it before or right as you start combat because you've been ambushed. So you don't have it ready or something. Now, there's not necessarily a reason not to have it ready. I don't think there's any time limit. Yeah, it says until you doff it or whatever. And it can be like a second skin. So you can just sleep in it. But it's just interesting what kind of mechanics that brings into play with this power armor. So I'm really excited to see that.
Also at 3rd level, you get the armor model. So this is probably the more choice point segment of this. You can customize your power armor. When you do so, choose one of the following armor models: Guardian or Infiltrator. The model you choose gives you special benefits while you wear it. Each model includes a special weapon. When you attack with that weapon, you can use your intelligence modifier instead of strength or dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. You can change your power armor's model whenever you finish a short or long rest, provided you have smith tools in hand. Guardian. You design your armor to be in the front line of conflict. It has the following features: Thunder Gauntlets. Your armored fists each count as a simple melee weapon, and each deals 1d8 thunder damage on a hit. A creature hit by the gauntlet has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you until the start of your next turn, as the armor magically emits a distracting pulse when the creature attacks someone else. Oh boy. Defensive Field. You gain a bonus action that you can use on each of your turns to gain temporary hit points equal to your level in this class, replacing any temporary hit points you already have. You lose these temporary hit points if you doff the armor. That's cool. Infiltrator. You customize your armor for subtle undertakings. It has the following features. Lightning Launcher. A gem-like node appears on one of your armored fists or on the chest. Iron Man. It counts as a simple ranged weapon with a normal range of 90 feet and a long range of 300 feet, and it deals 1d6 lightning damage on a hit. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with it, you can deal an extra 1d6 lightning damage to that target. Powered Steps. Your walking speed increases by 5 feet. Second Skin. The armor's weight is negligible, and it becomes form-fitting and wearable under clothing. If the armor normally imposes disadvantage on dexterity or stealth checks, the power armor doesn't. Okay, so especially what you're saying about pivoting into a tank role, you can pivot every short rest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and I guess there's that mechanic I was talking about with like whether or not you have the armor powered up already before combat, because in order to like have the armor be power armor on and like sleep in it or whatever, you would have to have the second skin thing, I think, with the Infiltrator. So like if it turns out to be combat where you need to be the Guardian, then you would have to like change it or something, right? You change it whenever you finish. Oh, okay. Never. Oh, wow. Actually, that would really suck. If all of a sudden you're in like this really heavy hitting fight and then you're like, man, I really wish that I changed it to, Guardian. I didn't expect this or something like that.
But also it brings into account that if you know, okay, well, we're going to need to sneak into this space, I can use my Infiltrator armor. And once you're in that space, hey guys, can we take 30 minutes? And you change into Guardian, and then you go bash up a mob boss. It allows you to pivot pretty quickly when you say you finish a short or long rest, and adds specific value to your intelligence modifier. So once again, your intelligence is going to help you hit harder with a lot of these.
Yeah, I can imagine the Infiltrator one being like for a gala event. So something that, you know that you're going to get patted down or whatever, but it's form-fitting and light, and something that you can kind of sneak in and still have like a lot of magic available.
Also as a part of this, because we're following into that tank mode, at 5th level, you gain extra attack. You can attack twice rather than once whenever you take your attack action. Great. And then at 9th level, you gain armor modifications. You learn how to use your Artificer Infusions to specially modify the armor enhanced by your power armor feature. That armor now counts as separate items for the purposes of your Infuse Items feature. Armor, the chest piece, boots, bracers, and a weapon. Each of those items can bear one of your infusions. In addition, the maximum number of items you can infuse at once increases by 2, but those extra items must be part of your power armor. So you can put specific infusions on your arms, on your weapon, on your boots, on the chest of the armor, which allows, I guess, different powers to be accessible in those different parts. This is D&D Iron Man, and the more I bear down into this, I was looking at an enforcer, like a technological enforcer class as a class for book 2 of Grey Owls, because it'll be more in the future-ish. And looking at how this is constructed, this might be adopted for some of those characters. It's great.
Yeah, I like this idea of being able to put infusions into your stuff, like putting magic missile or something into like one of your armor pieces, so you don't have to blow the spell slot later. Or I actually don't know a whole lot about Artificer Infusions. What is that exactly? How does that work out?
So Infusions is the Artificer mechanic that allows you to make magic items. So it'll say something like, there's like a list that you can pick where, if you're a 3rd level Artificer, I don't know if this is real, but like you can make boots of elven kind, and you have a certain amount of infusions and a certain that you can know, and then a certain amount of items that you can infuse, which are 2 different numbers. So you can usually know more infusions than you can actually infuse items. So, and the idea is just like how you can change what model armor you have. Like, let's say you need a different infusion. You can swap it out. I think it's a short or long rest. It might be a long rest that you can change what an infused item's infusion is. So, which lets you pivot. But I think you can only swap out what infusions you know each time you level up, kind of like a spells known thing. It also nicely combines with Soul of Artifice, which is where for each item you're attuned to, you get a +1 bonus to saving throws. So you become an incredibly self-sufficient character with this. The only thing because Cure Wounds is I think Cure Wounds is an Artificer spell on the spell list. Adam has the book open. Is Cure Wounds something you can share?
See here. Just checking out your infusions.
Yeah. And there are other things, like you can build a Cloak of Protection.
Yeah, Cure Wounds is on there.
Yeah, so, and the only limitation I could see is, like, because it calls out specific pieces of the armor, like, these are the boots. You can't, like, have your gloves be the boots of Elvenkind. You know, like, that doesn't, you gotta match
No.
up.
And what it's really saying is you have these subtle enhancements through infusions. It's not that you're attaching a spell to this thing.
Yeah.
You're attaching a certain enhancement, like attaching, say, enhanced weapon. So this weapon grants a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and when you reach 10th level, it's +2. So your fists, like the bracers, could do more damage.
Adam, can you read spell storing item?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure spell storing item would let you do what Ian's saying, which is like if you have the gloves.
Spell storing item as an infusion is not in.
It's not an infusion. It's a feature.
What's feature? Excuse me.
Yeah, it's I think it's at 6th level.
Oh, I see. Yep, there it is. Well, let's see. When you finish a long rest, you touch one simple or martial weapon or one item you can use as a spellcasting focus. You can use the armor as a spellcasting focus, and you store a spell in it. Choosing a 1st or 2nd level spell from the Artificer spell list that requires 1 action to cast.
Which would be Magic Missile.
Which would be Magic Missile.
So there you go. Yeah. Because the armor counts as different items, it's not an infusion, but mechanically there's still a way to store spells like a Magic Missile. When I'm Mizzix, I always do it for Dark Vision. I have one of his gems he carries around be a spell storing item for Dark Vision, which has 10 uses because it's double your intelligence modifier. So it's basically, that's why at the beginning of everything, I'm just like, hey, who needs Dark Vision? Bop you on the head with it. And that way, if everybody built humans and nobody is Dark Vision, you know, he can just go around and bop everybody to make sure that we're ready for the next 8 hours.
I like that. And yeah, I knew I heard it from somewhere. I was like, oh, that sounds like a really cool thing. I wish they did that. But
looks like you can. And it does have a limitation. You can only store one of them at a time. And it's got to be 1st or 2nd level. But still, you could store in your chest plate Magic Missile. And I'd like to think that, you know, those are literal missiles that are flying out of your armor to take care of some things.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Or hey, haste is 3rd level, unfortunately. But like mirror image, you could store in the armor and be, it's getting in trouble, guys. Boop. And now you have mirror image up to help you out.
Call my twin brother. But yeah, no, I like that idea because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Mandalorian where he had the seeking little bird things, missiles. Kind of like that for Magic Missile. That would be really cool for like a flavor in this kind of a subclass. Yeah, sucks you can't do to the 3rd level because, you know, like Fireball. No.
Could you imagine him like having a gauntlet just for grease? Just like, oh no, grease everything!
That actually sounds really good. This makes me, I've never played Artificer, and you've mentioned how complicated the class can get.
Yeah.
But I do kind of want to play it now. So
my mom is playing an Alchemist right now, and she's doing my mom really impresses me because she is really willing to play classes that are probably more complicated than she can handle, but there's also a trust that I'm not going to screw her over if I'm her DM. I'll remind her of the little things. That'll make a big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, Artificer, she picked up Artificer pretty fast. It's not complicated to play. It's just complicated to manage. So like if you're in combat and you're like, what option should I pick? It's not complicated. But if it's like, we just finished a long rest, which 10 infusions should I pick up? Who should I give them to? How many things am I attuned to? Like, what spells should I prepare? You know, when it starts to be like that, what are my damage resistances? Like, it becomes a huge... It's like, you know, you can play Magic the Gathering, but you'll probably spend a lot longer building your deck. You know, it's a very prep-heavy class that can be overwhelming if you're not used to managing a lot of options.
It's not one that you kind of jump into and then going, so what can I do?
Yeah.
You kind of need to do the reading and the prep for yourself.
And it helps to start at a low level and build it up one feature at a time instead of jumping into 17th or 18th level like I did. You got 3 sheets filled of all your features and abilities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 15th level, you gain Perfected Armor. Your power armor gains additional benefits based on its model, as shown below. For Guardian, tinkering with your armor's energy system leads you to discover a powerful pulling force. When a creature you can see ends its turn within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to force the creature to succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC, or be pulled up to 30 feet toward you to an unoccupied space. If you pull the target to a space within 5 feet of you, you can make a melee weapon attack against it as part of this reaction. Hello, Scorpion. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. You regain all expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. For Infiltrator, any creature that takes lightning damage from your lightning launcher glimmers with light until the start of your next turn. The glimmering creature sheds dim light in a 5-foot radius, and the next attack roll against it by a creature other than you has advantage. If that attack hits, it deals an extra 1d6 lightning damage, and if you've got your buddy the rogue, you get sneak attack for that.
Yay, sneak attack.
I appreciate too that the Infiltrator that would normally be a very like a sneaky thing, it's something that's meant to be a little bit more subtle, can add that subtlety to another class that is subtle, is meant to be a very, you know, quick damage dealer in the realm of the rogue.
Yeah, this kind of makes sense for Infiltrator because it's like a stun gun. So like if you run into somebody you can't get around, you just take out your taser and you just tase them with sneak attack damage, and then you say to the DM, non-lethal damage if and when they die. So so it would work out pretty well in that sense if you think about it.
Yeah, it's funny. My friend Tim is a police officer, and he was trying to tell me that, like, oh, if you get them in an armbar, they can't get out of it. And martial arts man that I am, I'm like, well, what if they do this? And he looked at me and goes, John, I would just tase you. I wouldn't even try. I'd just tase you. I'd knock you out first, then arrest you. But one thing I like before we move on to Circle of Stars is...
Oh, no, we're going to talk about some of the infusions,
Oh,
too.
right. But the fact that it deals thunder damage is one of those that you like almost never see. And I love that it's this concussive force. I put it in the chat of our thing here, but it reminds me of Big O, like the robot. So like I can imagine that piston shooting back. Yeah. And there was an episode where it showed what happens when like the enemy gets away from him. And that's what it is. It's a concussive, thunderous force that punched through 3 buildings. That's how powerful that thunder punch can be. So I just love that idea of Big O, but being small O, where it's like Cheery O. Maybe that's Cheery O, the
Cheerios?
The gnome armorer. Little gnome in a big suit, getting into all sorts of trouble.
I can just imagine having this kind of unsuspecting, like, but really strong, like, tiny character. That's what I really like sometimes in like D&D is when you have just this image of a tiny person, but they're like in this big bulky armor and they're just sitting there and they're like, and then it's like, let's bring it on, short stuff, and then it's just like thunder punch.
Often the artificers that have played in my campaigns are often small creatures. It's often the goblin or the kobold or the gnome artificer. It's the little guys that are just like, oh, by the way, boom, and it's great. It's just a wonderful you just changing your expectations of what's going to happen on the battlefield. You always expect the half-orc barbarian to swing the axe and do the damage, but then to have the kobold just go, boom, and knock somebody silly is kind of cool. It's a nice nice juxtaposition.
How funny would it be, sorry, just as an aside, how funny would it be to have like this big half-orc barbarian and stuff, and they're like the apprentice to the artificer, because the artificer is like ridiculously stronger than them, and it's like a Saitama moment where Saitama and Genos is like really flashy and super explosive, and Saitama's just like slap.
Yeah. No, I love doing that when I introduce monk characters. Like, you have someone big and imposing that's like classic, like, they're like really like good at fighting, and then like a minotaur, but they're apprentice to like a little goblin monk who's like just been around the block and is just better at using leverage and technique. And it's just and that little guy can just stun them with one stunning strike. So yeah,
that was the whole inspiration, I think, behind Aki, which was a random kobold character that one of our players just went, I'm gonna come play, but I don't have a character. And I'm like, I'll just make you one. Okay, sure, I trust you.
Yeah,
and then Aki became like is one of the most powerful creatures in that group. That and the halfling barbarian Thera. But like when they go like tag team, it's very clear that Aki is super powerful and just have this image of this frenetic little twitchy kobold that nonetheless is doing flurry of blows like Ip Man, just and it's really cool. That's often what we get to see, and I love that change in expectations. So on top of this, the Artificer gains, and we were just talking about our infusions, the Artificer gets newer infusions to help with this, and looks like they're all I'm very excited about this one. We're going to talk about these. So when you choose this, you have access to the following options for your infusions. Now these have prerequisites and whatnot, but I'm just going to go over what they're going to do. So, Armor of Magical Strength. While wearing this armor, a creature can use its intelligence modifier in place of its strength modifier when making strength checks and strength saving throws. The armor has 4 charges. As a reaction, when it would be knocked prone, the wearer can expend 1 charge to not be knocked prone. The armor regains 1d4 expended charges daily at dawn. And remember, infusions can be added to things that are not on the Artificer, but that can happen.
I like to think that that's part of their armor, and it like as the armor gets knocked down, there's like emergency thrusters in its back that like and then like push it back up to like punch it in the face.
I like that. That's cool. And then but being able to say, I mean, oh man, you could give that to a suit of armor. So, I mean, are robes armor?
I think it has to give you an AC bump.
Yeah, no, their robes are not considered armor. That was something that was actually cleared up with Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, because there's I think it's Pride Silk got released, and Pride Silk is something that it costs 500 GP, because in Wildmount it's like a very specific kind of silkworm that a very specific craftsman can weave into it, and basically it's for nobles that go to galas but want to be armored. So it doesn't count as armor, but it gives you an AC calculation of 11 plus dex, like light armor. So, right. But it was like very emphatic that robes are not armor, armor is armor.
Right.
Yeah.
So my initial thought was, robes. You just give this to the robes of the wizard, and they can make better strength saves. But no.
No, and it depends on how you build your your wizard, because if you have like a human wizard, you can pick up a light armor proficiency with a feat.
Yeah.
And then you can pop it onto your light armor and then use your intelligence that way. So there is some clever building and team composition if the players are up for it.
Yeah. The next one is Armor of Tools. As an action, a creature wearing this infused armor can integrate it into Artisan's Tools or Thieves' Tools. The tools remain integrated in the armor for 8 hours or until the wearer removes the tools as an action. The armor can have only one tool integrated at a time. The wearer can add its intelligence modifier to any ability checks it makes with the integrated tool, and the wearer must have a free hand to use the tool. So your Thieves' Tools are now a part of your armor. Good job.
Nice. You just slap that hand onto that thing, like where you like kind of just hold out your hand and it just goes out. I can see. So I think this is pretty unique and it can be really useful. But I can also see why there's no like prerequisite for it, because it's like it's not as powerful as Armor of Magical Strength or Helm of Awareness, as I'm sure we'll find out shortly.
Yeah. Helm of Awareness is while wearing this helmet, and it's a 10th level Artificer requirement, a creature has advantage on initiative rolls. In addition, the wearer can't be surprised, provided it isn't incapacitated. It's like a minor alert, but having the advantage on initiative is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Mind Sharpener, the infused item can send a jolt to the wearer to refocus their mind. Ooh.
This shows, a suit of armor or a robe. So this one makes the distinction for us.
Yeah, okay. So cool. While wearing this infused item, whenever the creature fails a Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, it can use its reaction to succeed instead.
Yep. It's you know what? If monsters can get legendary resistances, somebody can use their reaction to instantly succeed on a concentration check like once. Like the only thing I don't like about it, there's no limit on it.
But there's no limit.
There's no limit and there's no prerequisite level. So it means that in your as long as you keep your reaction free, you're never going to fail a concentration check.
That's pretty clutch.
Well, it's pretty broken is what it is. But you already know my feelings on legendary resistance. So.
Oh, yeah.
I can see that being useful though, it can also be tricky for a caster, like if a sorcerer has counter spell or something or shield, and they're very smart enemies, so they're like, yes, of course. They've been, beating us to death with that wall of light or something, whatever requires concentration. Let's make them use their shield and then break their concentration because they'll, So it could still be balanced if your DM is more aware of Mind Sharpener's abilities.
Yeah,
that's okay, but it also adds value to it, and there is a limiter already on your infusions, but still, this is pretty cool. Yeah. Now, the last one is a spell refueling ring. The item must be a ring, and it does require attunement. But while wearing this ring, the creature can recover one expended spell slot as an action. The maximum level of the recovered spell slot is equal to the number of magic items the wearer is currently attuned to. Once used, the ring can't be used again until the next dawn. So if you have 3 attuned items, you can get as high as a 3rd level spell slot back.
Okay, so this really benefits the Artificer the best in that sense. But at the same time, if like you have a really good, if you need counterspell and you're just out of those spell slots or something, then you can get it back and then use a cantrip bonus action or something if you have one.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree that these seem to be built for the Artificer to use, not to give to other people. Besides Mind Sharpener, I can see any spellcaster really wanting that option. But you're right, Ian, because Artificer ends up getting 5th level spellcasting, and they can attune to up to 5 items. So it really is like most efficiently used for an Artificer. Again, unless you have like a utility caster whose job it is to cast utility spells like Counterspell and Dispel Magic, that would use it a little bit better.
just very much appreciate how synergized this class is. Everything feeds into the power armor. It feeds into the armor aspect, and everything ties back into that utility.
Yeah, they really just looked at Tony Stark and they're like, yeah, no, let's do that.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. So with that, we're looking at things, and we've had some really great discussions, but we're going to take a break here and get into the last 2/3 of subclasses part 3 next time. We won't even have a shower thought. We'll just go.
Yeah.
We'll just get it done. Because there's a lot of cool things to discuss, and we don't want to cut those thoughts short. So we'll see you for episode 88. This is 87. On all of those. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to today's episode of the DM Shower Thoughts. And you can find us, you can find Mr. John Tanaka over on the DM Shower Thoughts over on YouTube, soon to be joined by our grand archive of the previous 86 episodes of this podcast. This podcast uploads, by the way, on Podbean every Friday at noon. And we'll start uploading in the archive and maybe even current episodes. We'll see if we can get a nice schedule going on Wednesdays. Is that, I believe, what we decided?
Yeah.
Yeah. Over on the YouTubes with either Visualizer and all that jazz. And I'll address that in a second. You can find my blog now going to be posting every Tuesday and Saturday at noon over at the GM's Corner at AdamusDrakeProductions.com. And maybe soon Ian will be doing some sort of professional endeavor, and I'll point you in his direction. But for now, just look at his wonderful face, and I'm glad you're here, bud. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day, and please, game responsibly. Bye-bye!